I want to extend our knowledge of transitions now that we've seen how to apply a transition first of all, and how we use the Effect Controls panel to then further adapt it. As you can see for this tutorial, I've added in a further clip, and you'll see why as we progress. At the moment we've only got this one transition, the one that we brought in the previous tutorial, and you'll remember that if you've got it selected and then you open up the Effect Controls panel, then you'll see here that you can adapt or adjust how this particular transition is set up. However, as we saw in the previous tutorial, when we look down here where we've got the large A and B, if we want to replace this so that we can actually see the transition, or rather the clip to its left and the clip to its right, then remember we need to check in this checkbox here, Show Actual Sources. As soon as you do, then there you will see our first clip in this case and our second clip too. Remembering of course that this will only display if you've got your transition selected down on the timeline. If I click away to deselect it, then of course now within our effect controls, all those editable parameters are now taken out of view. It's easy enough to bring them back, simply select the transition once more. Okay. Now you'll also remember that the transition that we used is this cross dissolve. And if we look down in our effects panel within our video transitions category and then within dissolve, you can see that cross dissolve there takes on a sort of orange, or is it yellow border? Well, that simply indicates that this cross dissolve is our default transition. We'll look at changing this later. First of all, if I simply want to change our transition to something else, then because I've already got one selected and integrated between two clips, the cross dissolve, well, if I want to change this to something else, this dip to white for example, all I need to do is left click on it and drag and drop on top of the existing transition. This won't confuse Premiere Pro, it won't make it try and play back two transitions at once, it simply replaces it. Bearing in mind if you want to further edit, you will need to select this again down here. And as soon as you do, then of course our Effect Controls panel now displays all these parameters that we can change. And indeed next to this play button, we can see the description there. Image A fades to white, then fades to image B. And if we do want to see a small preview, remember, just simply click on here. And there you'll see in that very small preview just below what this will look like. There is that fade between the clips, moving into white and out again. Okay, now with it switched off, I'll go back down to my timeline and deselect by clicking elsewhere. By the way, you're not restricted to having a transition only between clips. You can have a transition at the beginning of a clip or at the end of a clip. If we use a transition between two clips, as we have done so far, well, this is known as a two-sided transition. But if we include a transition at the beginning or at the end, then we see what's known as a one-sided transition. I'll do it with this one here, dip to black. I'll left click and drag and drop right at the beginning of our timeline, placing this dip to black transition as a one-sided transition right at the very beginning. And I'll also do the same thing right at the end of clip 3. Left click once more and drag and drop right at the end, creating another one-sided transition as well. Okay, and that's what it looks like. It's often a nice way of finishing off a sequence, fading away to black. Anyway, if that's not for you and you want to delete a transition, regardless of whether it's a one-sided or a two-sided transition, all you need to do is select it first of all, and you can either hit the backspace key on your keyboard or you can hit delete on your keyboard, and that simply removes it. I'll do it for the end one as well. Select it and then hit delete. Possibly another way of doing this is right-clicking on the transition, and I'll do it on this two-sided one, seeing as it's the only one we've got left at the moment. And there you'll see two separate properties that you can change. We can either change or set the transition duration, i.e. we can change it from what it's at the moment, or you can simply hit clear to remove it. I'm not going to do either, I want to actually keep it in place, but those two options are there for you. Right click on a transition to see that. And I didn't want to clear it because I actually want to keep it. And not only keep it, but I actually want to copy it. So rather than having to go through the process, although admittedly it's not a big process, but not having to go through the process of choosing from the category within the effects panel, if you're happy with the transition that you've got set up and already in place, and perhaps you've changed the duration so it's not the same as a default, well, simply select it first of all, and then you can copy and paste it into a different position. And the quick way of doing this is making sure you have it selected, hit Ctrl+C on Windows, Command+C on Mac to copy it onto your clipboard, and then move your CTI to the next position or very close to the position where you want this to be pasted in. I'm going to place it there, of course, because that's the only other split point. And I'm going to paste this in by using the shortcut Ctrl+V or Command+V on Mac. However, just before I do, be aware that because these clips are right at the end of their frames, as it were, i.e. I've not trimmed them, when I paste this transition in, it's not going to be able to straddle across the end of clip 2 and the beginning of clip 3. What it's going to do is it's going to try and place it either at the end of clip 2 or at the beginning of clip 3. I'll show you what I mean. I'll use Ctrl+V and there you go. It's now placed our copied transition right at the end of clip 2. If I try and move it so it straddles the two by left clicking and dragging over, well of course because we've not trimmed these two clips, I can't actually make it straddle between the two. So what I need to do is trim these two clips first of all. I'll delete that transition. With it selected, I'll hit delete on my keyboard, and then now I'll trim away the end and the beginning of these two clips. Okay, perfect. And now because my CTI is on that division line, I can use Ctrl+V or Command+V to paste in the exact same parameters for that transition at this split point. Okay, and as you can see, that's what it looks like in action. Now I'm going to finish up by looking at preferences for transitions, and I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, to show you that within preferences we can access and consequently change different parameters, but not all. So I'll come up to Edit, drop down to Preferences, and then fly out and choose General, and we now see at the top here that our video transition default duration is set to 25 frames. Well, that suits me in the UK because 25 frames equates to 1 second. Remembering of course that PAL runs at 25 frames per second. If you are using NTSC, you might want to set this to 30 if you want your default duration to be 1 second. And then we've got similar below with the audio transition default duration. Well, that's not set to frames, that's set to seconds, so that's easy enough to sort out. And then below that, if you bring in some photographs or still images, then the default duration is set there. I've got that set to 125 frames. But there's nothing here about actually setting the default in terms of the default transition used. So I'll close our preferences down. Remember what I said earlier, at the moment this cross dissolve is our default, and we can tell that because of that sort of orangey yellow border. I actually do want to keep this as my default, but if I wanted to change it to something else, then simply choose the one that you do want to change it to, select it first of all. Maybe this random invert, although to be honest I never would want this as my default. But I'm just showing you this as an example. Then all you need to do is right click, and there you'll see the option to set the selected as the default transition. And now because we activated that, this random invert takes on that yellowy orange border. I'm going to take it back to cross dissolve. I'll select it and then right click once more and choose our option there to set this as the default. Okay, so that's a quick run through then, what we can do with our transitions, how we can replace them, edit them and adjust them as necessary.